Hello everyone, my name is Kelly Johnson and I'm a Curriculum Officer at NCFE. My background is vocational education and I have 15 years of experience of working in the FE sector in various roles including a teacher, a curriculum leader and a curriculum manager. I specialise mainly in the subjects of sport, health and fitness, and I've educated young people from level 1 to foundation degree level including A-levels. My role is to support centres through the planning, onboarding and CPD processes for NCFE qualifications, but in particular the VCERT qualifications, with a focus on promoting and advancing learning. You're very welcome to this webinar, and in today's session we will examine the external assessment preparation and revision strategies in the subject area of business and enterprise. The plan for this webinar is to firstly provide you with an overview of the external assessment, including the assessment objectives and weighting, the types of questions and grading. I'll then describe the external assessment regulations, including the timetable, specific instructions, and the process that is available for access arrangements and special considerations. I'll then explain the resources and the support that is available to you and your centres. I'll also explain some of the revision strategies and tools that are available, but by no means this is not an exhaustive list. Lastly, there will be an opportunity to share strategies that you use and ask any further questions that, as I've already said, will be answered after the webinar. Before I do go through the external assessment overview though, I'd just like to do a quick poll on how confident you're currently feeling with the preparation and revision for the external assessment. 1 is no to little confidence and 10 being very confident. Okay, I think we've got all the responses in. So I'm going to share the results with you on the screen. So many thanks for everyone who's just voted. And as you can see, the poll results show that we do have a mixture, with the main of the attendees being between 5 and 6, some between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and a few being between 7 and 8. So it was my expectation that for the first question that you'd all be at different stages in relation to your confidence levels. And I do hope by the end of this webinar you are feeling more knowledgeable and confident about the preparation and revision for the external assessment for the level 1/2 technical award in business and enterprise. So I'm going to start then and by taking a closer look at Unit 1, the external assessment, or more familiarly known as the exam. What I'd like to do first of all though is just go through our approach to awarding for 2021-22 given the pandemic over the last 18 months or so. So the technical award qualifications have an external assessment that must be sat on a set date and a time at your centre. External assessments will go ahead in the academic year of 2021-22 unless public health measures deteriorate, in which case this will be reviewed by the government. Previously, where assessments were timetabled for a set date and time, we have updated our assessment variation process to allow centres to use additional test centre locations. Where possible, we have also now implemented further adaptations and include added additional assessment opportunities to support learners. So in the 2021 to 2022 academic year, learners will be permitted to up to 2 retake opportunities for the external assessments for all technical award qualifications. So they will have an external assessment opportunity in each exam series. So that is autumn, which is the one in November, spring, which is the March one, and then an additional window in the summer, which will be in June. And this date and other dates are confirmed in the external assessment timetable. We have also added the provision of advanced notification of test topics where possible, and this will support with the preparation for the assessment and allow centres to manage the impact of learning loss in the assessment preparation. However, it is important to note though that we are still waiting for confirmation of details of this, i.e. whether it can go ahead or not, from Ofqual and DfE on whether this adaptation can be implemented or not. And the most recent update is that we're expecting communication to go out to centres hopefully by the end of the week, but if not next week at the latest. So please do keep your eye out for that information. Assessment opportunities where learners have received results based on tags, teacher assessed grades, or CAGs, which are centre assessed grades, do not count towards these retake opportunities. For further information, please do see our updated external assessment timetable guide, which is available on the website via the link that's on the screen. The external assessment will be in the form of a written external examination, which will assess the learner's knowledge and understanding of the content from Unit 1. The Level 1/2 Technical Award in Business and Enterprise covers 5 assessment objectives. The first 3 are about using and demonstrating knowledge and understanding, and it is these that will be in the external assessment. A variety of assessment styles will be used, including multiple choice, short answer, and extended response questions. This will enable learners to demonstrate their breadth of knowledge and understanding of the subject and ensure achievement at the appropriate level, including stretch and challenge. The questions will be written in plain English and in a way that is supportive and accessible to all learners of all abilities. As far as possible, real-world scenarios and contexts which are relevant to the sector will also be used. This is to engage and stimulate learners under examination conditions and to facilitate the drawing out of a wide range of knowledge and skills developed throughout their learning. All questions will be compulsory, with available marks clearly identified. The written external assessment will be carefully constructed following a rigorous quality control process to ensure that the assessment is valid. Unit 1 has 48 guided learning hours and the external assessment lasts an hour and a half. It has a total of 80 marks, and as business as usual, there are external opportunities usually in November and March each year. And the reason usually for this is because there's only one resit opportunity available. And it's whichever external assessment they perform better in is the grade that counts towards their final grade. You will need to ensure your learners are registered on the qualification before they can be booked onto the external assessment. The external assessment timetable contains key information such as the date and the time of the external assessment and expected results release date. It will also tell you the cut-off for booking your learners for the external assessment, and this is usually about 2 weeks before the actual external assessment. And please note that there are late fees if learners are registered late. As I was saying in the previous slide, for 21-22, learners will be permitted up to 2 retake opportunities for external assessments for all the technical award qualifications, and we have added additional assessment opportunities. So put simply, what this actually means is that there are 3 opportunities for learners to take the exam, so one in November, one in March, and one in June. If your learners are to take the exam in November, they also have the 2 further opportunities to take that assessment in March and June. And again, the CAGs and/or tags do not count towards those retake opportunities. The dates of these external assessments will also be, as I said, confirmed in the external assessment timetable, which is on QualHub. For business and enterprise, 40% of the marks in the external assessment are for recalling and showing knowledge and understanding, whereas the higher order thinking of analysis and evaluation will account for 25% of the marks. This allows the assessment to cover both level 1 and level 2 learners, and the style of questions is a mix of short answer, multiple choice, and longer response answers. As far as possible, real-world scenarios and contexts which are relevant to the sector will be used. And as I've said, this is to engage and stimulate learners under examination conditions and to facilitate the drawing out of a wide range of knowledge and skills developed throughout their learning. All questions should be attempted and the available marks are clearly identified. The external assessment will be in the form of a written exam, which will assess the learner's knowledge and understanding of the content from Unit 1. There are 3 main types of questions on the external assessment. The first question type is multiple choice, and these are usually worth 1 or 2 marks. Multiple choice questions cover assessment objective 1, like this one from Business and Enterprise, where the learner must identify one example of an external stakeholder. The second type of question is the short answers, and they are usually worth around 4 marks. Short answer questions, such as this example, ask learners to explain 2 methods that could be used to promote a business. The third type of question is the extended response, and these questions are usually worth 6 marks or more. And this example is a 9-mark question and asks learners to use their knowledge of promotional methods to evaluate why a small business would prefer to use social media to promote their business rather than using radio and local newspaper advertising. The look of the external assessment paper will contain the learner instructions and learner information. It will also include how many marks the question is worth, 6 in this case, and they are written in plain English as much as possible to ensure it is accessible by the learners. Bolding is also used to highlight important aspects such as the command verbs, and other key words, like this example where the number 2 is bolded. Key or command words are used in terms of question structure and expectation. So for example, identify is a single word or short response. Describe is a short sentence response, and explain is a response with expansion, and so on. For the extended response questions, the marking is laid out in bandings or levels. In each banding, the learners need to demonstrate all 3 of the assessment objectives to be successful. So, Band 1 needs assessment objective 1, 2 and 3, which is shown, and Band 2 needs assessment objective 1, 2 and 3 as well, but with more detail. And Band 3 is the highest level, so the assessment objectives must be strongly demonstrated. So on this slide is a generic example, and if it was a 9-mark question, then Level 1 or Band 1 would be worth 1 to 3 marks. Level 2 or Band 2 would be worth 4 to 6 marks, and Level 3 or Band 3 would be 7 to 9 marks. In Band 1, for Assessment Objective 1, learners must recall and communicate basic knowledge and understanding from a limited range of business and enterprise principles with limited accuracy. And subject-specific terminology, if used, would be basic and inconsistent. Whereas in Band 3, for Assessment Objective 1, learners must recall and communicate comprehensive knowledge and understanding from a wide range of business and enterprise principles. Subject-specific terminology would be used accurately and consistently throughout the project. And the same principle is applied for each of the assessment objectives and the banding that can be given to determine the marks that are awarded. Next, we will have a look at the grading of the external assessment. The uniform mark scale is a method used to standardise the marking of papers across multiple external assessment windows, excuse me, by converting the raw mark out of 80 into a UMS score. The final grade in the external assessment is determined by converting the raw mark into a maximum UMS of 160. A minimum of 24 UMS is needed to get a Level 1 pass, and a minimum of a Level 1 pass is required in both the external and synoptic project to obtain an overall grade. Next then, I'll talk you through the external assessment regulations. On QualHub, there are 4 different tabs at the top of the page. And in the Policies and Documents tab is where you'll find the key documents, including the assessment regulations, and these are the regulations in this section are for the internal and external assessments. We are a member of the Joint Council for Qualifications, or JCQ, but for 21-22, we are only partially aligned to their policies and processes concerning external assessment regulations. For the external assessment, there is a document called the Regulation for the Conduct of External Assessment. This is a set of generic instructions regarding preparing for the external assessment, administering the assessment, and what to do after the assessment has been completed. It includes information like the safe and secure storage of the assessment papers, the start and end times of assessments, which can be changed by 30 minutes, and the steps needed if you need a large time change. It also includes the invigilation of the external assessment, what the invigilator should do, and how to position desks, etc. For 21-22, this document has been closely aligned to the equivalent JCQ Instructions for Conducting Examinations document, but there are still significant differences for some of our qualifications. Therefore, it's best if this document is read by anyone involved with the external assessments, as if there was a concern raised about the conduct of the external assessment, then the quality assurance team would need to investigate. So, the more people that are familiar with these regulations, then the smaller the chances are of that happening. Please do note though, from 21-22 onwards, it is our intention to fully align with JCQ in this regard, although given the nature and complexity of some of our qualifications, there may actually be appendices or annexes with additional information that supersede content within the main document. This next document is the Qualification Specific Instructions for Delivery, or QSID, and it gives specific information for the different qualifications unless reasonable adjustments are in place. So for example, if the assessment needs to be invigilated or supervised, if the use of the internet is permitted, and so on. And for all subject areas in the Level 1/2 Technical Award, the same rules apply, which are: the external assessment papers will be delivered and securely returned to us. There is no online option available. The external assessment lasts an hour and a half and is on a set day and time. The learners don't need internet or computer access to complete the external assessment. Learners need a black or blue pen and a ruler, with pencils and calculators being optional. As the external assessment is on a set date and time, it is important to know where the external assessment timetable is. And when you click on the Delivery and Learner Support tab, you will find the external assessment timetable, which includes cut-off dates for registering your learners and the date when results will be available. The other useful section on this tab is the forms, which I will come on to shortly. You need to have your learners registered before you can book them onto the external assessment. Firstly, if we look at the external assessment timetable for 21-23, you will see the cut-off date for booking your learners onto the external assessment. Like I've said before, if you book your learners after this date, then late fees will be incurred. Then there is an assessment date and time, and as I mentioned, you can change the start date by 30 minutes, so please do check the regulations. We also have the results release date, which is when you find out how well your learners have done. And as I've already mentioned, this year, learners are permitted up to 2 retake opportunities for external assessments. So to support learners further, we've put in place an additional assessment opportunity in summer. It is useful to be aware of the forms section, and I'm just going to highlight some of the key forms. As I mentioned earlier, if the external assessment regulations aren't followed, then we need to be informed, which can be done via the malpractice or maladministration forms. If you do miss the cut-off dates, then you will need to complete the late entry forms. If any of your learners need extra time, a scribe, and so on, then the access arrangements and reasonable adjustments form needs to be submitted. This year, there's been an update in terms of access arrangements and reasonable adjustments. So this year, instead of notifying us via the form on the website, as of September this year, centres can complete details of any access arrangements and reasonable adjustments at the point of registration in the NCFE portal. Once the relevant details have been submitted, they will stay with the learner across all qualification registrations and all future external assessment bookings. The request for special consideration is after the assessment has been taken, and it is for when someone has adverse circumstances which could impact on the learner's ability to demonstrate their usual level of attainment. So for example, like illness or bereavement. And the request for the assessment variation is when you need to vary the assessment from either the published assessment date, the published assessment time beyond the permitted 30 minutes, or change or to extend the assessment site from your current approved location. Now I'd like to take a closer look at the resources and support that are available to you in your centres. The key area for support will be QualHub. Qualhub.co.uk will be your primary go-to where you can search for all our qualifications and access to specification, assessments, teaching materials, regulations and much more. You can begin by typing your qualification subject area or just put in your qualification code and it will give you a suggested list of qualifications. Using actual assessment material is a good way to make revision effective, and the material I'm going to show you now is also available free of charge. For every qualification, you will find past or sample exam papers. You will also find the mark schemes, and they will say which assessment objectives are being addressed by which question. Furthermore, the Chief Examiner's Report, which can be found in the Assessment Materials tab on QualHub, does provide an insight to how learners perform nationally on different questions. So, for example, which questions had strong answers, which questions were answered incorrectly, and what were the common errors, which can help inform your future teaching, but also your revision plans. There are some exam preparation exercises for different questions, but mostly for the extended response questions. For the business and enterprise extended response questions, there are worksheets that also include model answers, which can be used to improve your learners' achievement. This example here is a 6-mark question about discussing organisational business structures. These can be useful for the examination preparation and revision and determining which method your class or learners find the most effective. We also have past and sample synoptic projects which can be accessed, and we have sample learner portfolios. Due to the content crossover with the synoptic project and the external assessment, some of the example portfolios can also be used for revision. iAchieve is a useful third-party site which has been endorsed by NCFE and specifically covers the NCFE Level 1/2 Technical Award in Business and Enterprise. iAchieve is an online learning platform where learners have their own learning space. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start briefly with the revision strategies that are the most effective according to the research. And what I would like to do is first launch a poll just so you can let me know what you think is the most effective. So I will share the results that have come through. And as I did expect, there would be a mixture of responses in relation to the ones that are most effective. And it's quite interesting that 77% have suggested that active recall is the most effective, and 31% is spaced practice, and that there are some interesting responses for the other ones, because really in summary, all or a mix of these techniques can be effective according to learning style, stages of revision, and so on. But on the next slide, I'm going to just explain what the research. So John Dunlosky, a professor of psychology at Kent State University, examined the efficacy of 10 learning strategies from multiple research sources and found that only 2 were shown to be very effective. And as you've said in the poll, active recall and spaced or distributed practice were the only ones that were demonstrated to be effective in a wide array of situations. Please note though, this isn't to say that other methods aren't effective, it's just that these 2 are the most effective and have the most evidence behind them to support the effectiveness claim. In relation to tests, exams and quizzes, active recall, it can involve 2 learners, for example, reading and revising a piece of text. The first learner decided to reread the text a second time, but learner 2 decides to quiz herself on what has been read. And as the research suggests, the second learner who is undertaking active recall and will perform better. Furthermore, the research also suggests that rereading isn't as much as an effective strategy. The second strategy that has been demonstrated to be very effective is distributed practice instead of massed practice. Massed practice is when the revision is done in one continuous session with little to no breaks. whereas spaced or distributed practice is when the sessions are spread out. So for example, if the same length of time is being dedicated to the revision, say 3 hours, by spacing the sessions out, it will have a more positive impact on performance over massed practice. Highlighting was one revision strategy strongly favoured by learners, but in practice it doesn't contribute to higher performance. And in his own words, Professor Dunlosky said that when learners are using a highlighter, they often focus on one concept at a time and are less likely to integrate the information they're reading into a larger whole. However, highlighting can be a good starting point, but it does need to be built upon and active recall added to make it as effective as possible. So not particularly helpful as a revision strategy, but it can be used as a first step towards further study. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you a few strategies and activities that might help boost your learners' external assessment performance. And whilst I do talk through some of the key principles of each of the strategies or activities, please use the notes and comment sections in your participant session handbook to reflect on what strategy or activity you would be interested in trying out and how it could be applied to your daily teaching practice or a key topic or content for revision. So one strategy that I've used all the time when beginning external assessment preparation and revision with my learners was to get them to rank their own knowledge and understanding of the key topics of the unit. I will provide an overview of the key topic headings from the unit and then the subtopics, like this example on marketing mix from Learning Outcome 2. I would then ask them to use a RAG rating, so red, amber, green, or a traffic light system, first of all on the subtopics, and then provide a RAG rating overall for the main key topic. Then I would ask them to think about an action plan and make some notes of some ways that they could improve their RAG rating. I also included a comment section for them to add anything further, like a date to action by, any additional resources they need, and did it work well or not, and if not, why not, and so on. Remember though that learners are not often the best judge of their own revision and how effective it may be or not. But by getting learners to rank their own knowledge of their topics being revised, they deploy the important metacognitive strategy of evaluating their learning. So they will be likely to be accurate, even over-optimistic in their judgments of their knowledge and learning, but it still helps learners better calibrate their revision and monitor their ongoing progress. Another strategy is that you could teach your learners techniques such as mnemonics to help them remember difficult information. This ensures that they are less likely to experience cognitive overload, allowing them to move on to the higher level thinking. The most common ones, the expressions or word mnemonics, such as Roy G. Biv, to remember the colours of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. And the same thing could be remembered in a mnemonic sentence such as, Richard of York gave battle in vain. However, my example for business and enterprise is the acronym of IGDM, and this is another type of mnemonic, and it stands for Introduction, Growth, Maturity, and Decline in the Product Life Cycle. A good way to get the learners to remember this is using an Apple example to support the memory of this, where I equals AirTag, G equals Apple TV, M equals iPhone, and D equals iPod. Another business and enterprise example that could be used is OSRAM. Hopefully this will help you to remember that objective, speaker, room, audience, message, which are the 5 aspects of an effective presentation, and how to light up people's lives through your presentations. Another way of using active recall is the use of flashcards. In this case, I've got a business and enterprise question on one side and the answer on the other. It would be good to start flashcard production from the beginning of the course. So for example, every week or month or half term, learners are to produce flashcards on what they have learned. They can also use those flashcards as lesson starters and or plenaries every so often. This way, they will have built up a bank of flashcards by the end of the course, and they will have done some distributed practice by using them in the lessons, and it takes practically 0 teaching planning time to implement. Graphic organisers help us to consciously improve our thinking processes. They assist us in organising our thoughts, create connections, think more deeply, and help us visualise processes and procedures. By using a graphic organiser, we are more effectively thinking about our thinking. And examples of graphic organisers could include mind maps, flowcharts, spider diagrams. So for example, a mind map could be created for business aims and objectives and include the financial and non-financial. A large body of evidence shows that peer explanation benefits student learning. In short, peer teaching or explanation occurs when learners by design teach or explain key concepts or topics to other learners. Peer teaching is one of the best ways to master a particular subject, and it is a method of teaching where a student instructs another student, wherein the former will be the expert and the latter a novice. The student teacher can pose a challenging question to learners. Learners answer the question individually, and then learners work with a partner in the class to discuss their answers. And finally, learners answer the question again. Through the direct interaction between learners, peer teaching promotes active learning as well as participation within themselves. And there is a saying that to teach is to learn twice, and this method paves the teacher-student to also revise the topic again. Student teachers enhance their own depth of knowledge in the topic by instructing others. As an example, the first step would be the teaching and demonstrating as normal. You would then pair up the learners as you see fit, for example, similar or opposite ability, fixed or growth mindset, or male and female. You will have two sets of model answers, so each student in the pair gets a different set, and learners will study their model answers, let's say for 5 minutes. The learners then explain the model answer that they have and justify why the answer is correct. Or you could prepare model answers that contain errors or missing information, and the learners have to explain what else is needed. Now you can give the learners their own problem or question to work on. A variation of peer instruction is note-taking pairs. To engage learners in note-taking pairs, periodically interrupt a class to ask learners to compare their notes with one of those of their classmates. Next, encourage learners to talk about both the content and the format of their notes. Finally, ask for volunteers to show and discuss the merits of the different note-taking approaches. The minute test is a technique that I have used for the Assessment Objective 1 recall type questions, where I would give my learners a set of questions for homework, 10 questions for example. I would tell them that next lesson there was going to be a quick start quiz or just 5 questions, and that those 5 questions were on the homework sheet. I'd then display the questions on the board and the learner would answer them in their books and with peer or self-assess them. You could also get your learners to design and create quizzes to share amongst the class. This could be done on paper, or you could use a free online tool such as Quizlet or Hot Potatoes. It could also be useful for Learning Outcome 3, as this is a new concept for learners who probably haven't yet really considered operations management or lean management yet, as they will have had very little experience of this level of detail. Another strategy is just a minute that takes the classic radio game and adapts it to almost any topic, text or examination or revision term. Put simply, learners have to talk for a minute on a given topic. There's no pauses and no hesitations. If there are any slips or repetitions or micro pauses, then they lose a life. 3 strikes and you're out. So this is quite a fun but competitive little game. This particular strategy harnesses the self-explanation effect. So in short, if you can elaborate on a topic and explain it well, you have retrieved it from memory, which is a good revision act, as well as likely consolidating it too. Another method that can be used is called on a roll, and it includes a 6x6 grid. In each square, you can write a question or get learners to produce one of their own. Then a learner rolls the dice to get 2 numbers, 1 number of the row and 1 number for the column, and then the learners have to answer that question. Alternatively, you could have keywords on each square and learners have to come up with a definition or a question for that word. Or they roll in the order to have two words that they need to link them together, building in some self-explanation as mentioned previously as a promising technique. With this one, there are a wide range of options available. I highly recommend using past papers for revision with your learners, and it is an effective recall method. They help learners to become familiar with the structure of the paper and the language they use. Learners will probably already be used to the vocabulary from learning in the classroom, but it's good to get themselves familiarised with past papers so they know how everything is laid out, and on the external assessment day, they won't stress out over it. In some external assessments, some extra information might be printed in the paper, such as equations for sciences and mathematics. Again, it's good to know where these will be in the paper. Once you've done a couple of past papers, they'll know the layout of the questions. And generally, the paper will start with the lower mark questions and work up. But it's good to know so that you don't have to write an essay-long answer for a 2-mark question and not have enough time for the higher mark questions later in the paper. It's best for learners to practice completing the paper under external assessment conditions. And the benefits of completing the paper in this way is that they can work out how much time they will have for each question. Past papers can also be completed at home in a quiet space, and they could ask a parent, sibling or friend to act as an invigilator and tell them how much time they have left. From our website, you can also download a mark scheme and the Chief Examiner's report for each past paper. This way, you or the learner can mark the work and see where the marks lie and what grade they would get. Learners will also understand the different types of answers that are required and can use this to structure their answers. Using the mark scheme, learners can refine their answering skills and ultimately save time in the external assessment. If learners' revision notes are in bullet points, then completing past papers is a good way to practice putting that information that they have learnt into paragraphs. Being able to communicate their knowledge clearly is just about as important as knowing the knowledge itself. Once the paper has been completed, it will need to be marked. Learners can also mark their own work using the mark scheme and then can analyse their result, or they can ask a peer to do this as well. Teaching your learner to carefully analyse the breakdown of an external assessment question is a vital skill. I've had my learners underline, circle or highlight the context or scenario of the question to ensure they're referred to this setting. So in this question, the use of promotional for small businesses using either social media, radio or local newspaper. So they would highlight the key ask of the question and then use the command words to ensure that they're fully answering the question. Finally, have your learners write key notes around the question to remind them what they need to include before fully organising their thoughts on the page. External assessment wrappers are worksheets containing reflective questions that help learners to think about their performance in a test or external assessment. You could give them to your learners both before and after they receive their results and feedback. The worksheets can be given out before they receive feedback and should ask them to think about how they're prepared for their external assessment. So for example, which study strategies they used. Those given out after the feedback should make the student reflect on the mistakes they made and how they could prepare differently to ensure greater success in the future, making them more strategic learners. And it's been reported that wrappers work because they are time efficient. Learners are doing that task anyway. It only adds a few minutes to a task. Metacognition practice is built into that particular task. Learners are more self-monitoring in context. Feedback on accuracy can be built in, and feedback is immediate. Now, support can gradually be faded out, and it's in just 3 lessons that most learners are more successful on their own. And it just goes to show that minor interventions can significantly change behaviour. And on a side note, you could also adapt this and use this method as an assignment wrapper for the Synoptic project. This is another example of active recall, and it can also include higher order thinking skills with learners evaluating and justifying their decisions. In this example, we have learner evidence from part 1 of task A, where the learner has to define evidence to do with that particular brief. You could get learners to analyse the section of the task or as a whole and get them to decide what is good, what needs improvement, maybe what the grade would give, what grade you would give it, and how they could improve it in relation to that model answer. Learners could then swap their evaluations with each other and compare and discuss them. David Newling, 2013, said exemplars can provide information, skills, content and messages in a way that no other teaching methodology can. Exemplars are a very useful way in which learners can be helped to gain a firm understanding in a concrete, contextual and non-threatening fashion of exactly what it is that is required of them in order to succeed in their desired level of achievement. There are many different types of feedback that teachers can provide to their learners, and a common one of those being the model answers or exemplars. A model answer is an ideal response to a question, and it is an example of what would receive full marks and helps teachers demonstrate to learners how to include the key elements of a topic into an answer. Model answers are typically used so that learners can compare their own work to them and assess their strengths and areas for development. So this means that teachers don't have to necessarily provide individual feedback at this time. But of course, model answers can also definitely be helpful when coupled with personal feedback. They act as a useful reference point for learners when they are writing essays, demonstrating the ideal layout, format and content, and can help learners with their structure. However, specific comments tailored to learners' work will guide them to make the necessary changes to succeed in the future. Learners may find it easier to revise from model answers. If learners are struggling when it comes to external assessment preparation, model feedback can be a particularly useful revision resource. This further indicates that combining the strengths of both types of feedback is an effective way to make the most of a learner's learning process. For Business and Enterprise, on the Qualification Specification page in the Support Material tab, you will find these extended response exercises. And the first one being short tasks to prepare to answer the question, and the second includes answers at different bands with supporting commentary. There are also some smaller follow-up activities that can be completed by the learners. Another method or simple technique that I've used is called an interpretation grid. It's quick, easy and applicable to almost any lesson, topic or content. All you need is a simple 4-square grid, an image and a list of questions or prompts that can help lead your discussion from level 1, which is knowledge, to level 6, which is evaluation. So how does it work? You begin with a 4-square grid and you can draw one on the board or create an electronic document, or you can ask the learner to create one. You can use the 4 quadrants approach to the extended response questions as well. So place the extended response question in the center and the question that we have seen on the previous slide, and it is about why a small business would prefer to use social media to promote their business rather than using local radio and local newspaper advertising. In terms of subject-specific information for the knowledge and/or context, learners can explore knowledge of what a small business, for example, artisan bakery, newsagent, and independent beauty salon. Knowledge of the resources that are available to that small business, so for example, time, budget, equipment, and access to specialist staff. Then the learners could look at the differences between social media, local radio, and local newspaper advertising. This could also be linked to financial and non-financial business aims and objectives. So what does the small business want to achieve from the advertising? Is it increase profit, increase market share, increasing customers, advertise a new product or service, attract new customers or develop customer loyalty, etc. The third and fourth quadrant could look at the advantages and disadvantages of the promotional materials. So for social media, is it free or can you look into sponsored ads? And if they have the budget, can you track likes or shares? But not everyone has social media account. They will need to know how to use keywords to increase reach of the advert. For local radio, it's expensive. They need to access to specialist recording facilities and equipment. It may not be heard. The reach of the advert. However, if you do have a catchy advert, it could stick in somebody's head, and that they need to think carefully about when to play the advert to reach target customers. And for local newspaper, this is the same really for local radio, and they are both deemed as old-fashioned advertising methods. Now, not all learners will have an answer for each of the levels, but participating in a class conversation and/or discussions will encourage learners to process their thinking at a higher level. And if you use this same technique frequently, you will begin to notice which learners are using HOTS and which ones could use a little scaffolding to get there. A rubric is a performance-based assessment tool. Teachers often use rubrics to gather data about their learners' progress on a particular assignment or skill. Simple rubrics allow learners to understand what is required in an assignment, how it will be graded, and how they will be progressing towards proficiency. Rubrics can be both formative and summative assessment tools for evaluating written work, projects, oral presentations, or any other class assignment. So to help learners address these types of questions, they can then produce checklists for learners to use. This could also help if you have learners that are peer or self-assessing. And as the same generic statements are present on the mark scheme for the different assessment objectives, you could use them and make them more learner-friendly. You could also include sections after each statement for comments to be included if needed. So I'm going to finish off by looking at some of the technological tools that you may find useful for revision with your learners. During the course of lockdown and home learning, many of you may have become familiar with Google Docs and Google Forms. I'm just going to briefly go through one way of using it to create quizzes or even homework. When you start a new form, you can choose what type it is from multiple choice checkbox, drop-down menu, and more. And if you click on the Settings tab, you can choose to make it a quiz, whether they see their results immediately or later, or whether they can see the correct answer and so on. One option for business and enterprise is to use the 1-mark questions from the sample and past papers that we have available, or you could just create your own questions. You then copy it into the form and select the correct answer. And as feedback is vital for learner achievement, you can add feedback to the quiz. And this will allow you to add feedback for the incorrect answers as well as the correct answer. Padlet.com is best described as an online bullet board. You can choose from many different layouts, but the shelf one could be useful if you want to put images, links, videos, and more into different categories or headings. And with a free account, you can make up to 3 Padlets. In business and enterprise, you could set up a starter task for learners to list the entrepreneurial characteristics and skills, and then use this as a basis for further discussion, question and answer. You could use Padlet for the upload of ongoing learner work, allowing for collaboration and feedback. And learners can have discussions on there, or you could just get them to include the links from the Google form quizzes that you had them make, or you can just ask the learners to make their own Padlet and share it with you. EdPuzzle is a website that allows you to add content to online videos, so you can search and add content to videos from YouTube, the Khan Academy, TED Talks, or a video that's been created by another teacher. If you do use Google Classroom, you can link your class to EdPuzzle, and you can also search for a range of different videos on what topic you would like. And there are some ready-to-use ones already available too that have been created by others. You can add multiple choice questions to certain parts of the video, or you can add open-ended questions or use that option for discussion boxes to elicit learners' current thinking. Or you could add voiceovers or post-it notes to sections of these videos. You can also edit the videos by cutting or trimming certain parts of the video. And when you are finished with your editing, you can then assign them to your learners, and you can even prevent learners from skipping through parts of the video. You can check their progress in real time while they learn at their own pace. So for example, this might be useful and could be used for Learning Outcome 4, which is about customer service. The learners could be encouraged to make videos based upon their own experiences of customer service, or the teacher could make the video on customer service using the videos from YouTube. But please do note though that initially this may be time consuming to create and set up the videos, but once you have got them, they can be used in the future. Flipgrid is a free social video discussion platform. It's simple and makes learning fun, fulfilling and empowering. And again, if you're using Google Classroom, you can now sync up to 500 learners from your classroom list with Flipgrid to grant your learners direct access to Flipgrid discussions, and there's no email domains or usernames required. On this website, you would post your discussion topic and you could include specific details. You can also add links to other websites, include videos and links to forms, etc. You can then share the discussion topic with your learners by either having your classes set up, or you can make the discussion topic public, where a join code would be required to access it. Learners would then be able to reply with a video, and there are a host of options available on the website, just like there are things with like Instagram, TikTok, etc. to make it more exciting. You can then provide feedback to the learners either by a video yourself or via a text comment, and you can include grading criteria as well, such as Rubrics. You can also search for some of the pre-made topics, as well as get some ideas of things that you could do, or use the ready-made ones and assign them to your learners. And it also might be worth remembering that the advisory age limit for these social platforms is 13 years old. The website Mentimeter.com is another interactive and online presentation software program, and it is free, but there are some limitations with the free version. Mentimeter can be used in real-time classwork and live remote lessons. The interactive element allows questions to be submitted, quizzes to be taken, and much more. You can make an unlimited number of presentations, but in a single presentation, there is a maximum of 2 questions and a maximum of 5 quizzes per presentation. The questions can be submitted anonymously, and there is a profanity filter too. Microsoft PowerPoint has an add-in that allows you to insert Mentimeter slides into your presentation. Mentimeter can be used with external assessment revision and for a quick recap or review quizzes, or even have a quiz ready for learners to complete as an entry or starter activity. Kahoot is a game-based learning platform that makes it easy to create, share and play learning games or trivia quizzes in minutes in the classroom and at home. You can create a fun learning game in minutes, and these are called Kahoots. The format and number of questions is up to you. You can also add videos, images and diagrams to your questions to increase engagement. And Kahoots are best played in a group setting, and to join a game, you need a unique PIN. And if you are the game host, i.e. the teacher, then it's probably advisable to have a big screen. And players can answer on their own devices, i.e. their mobile phones, while the questions are displayed on the shared screen. Instructions on how to create Kahoots on your computer or in the app, as well as playing a live Kahoot, are available on their website. Quizlet is also another good revision tool and includes digital flashcards, matching games, practice electronic assessment and live quizzes similar to Kahoot, as well as the new expert explanations. Hot Potatoes also enables you to create interactive multiple choice, short answer, jumbled sentence, crossword, matching and ordering and gap fill exercises. So as we have now come to the end of the webinar, I'd just like to do another quick poll on how confident you're feeling now with the preparation and revision for the external assessment. And as with the first poll, 1 being no to little confidence and 10 being very confident. I'm just going to share those results with you. And as you can see, like I said, we do have an improvement from the first poll that was conducted. So I'm really pleased to see that people are feeling more confident. We even have some in the 9 and 10 bracket, so that's really pleasing. So as we now have reached the end of the webinar, I'd just like to thank you for your time today, and I do hope that you found it useful. As mentioned earlier, if you have asked any questions via the question box, I will respond in a timely manner after the webinar, and also there will be a follow-up email with the PowerPoint slides included with a recording of the video. Also, please do feel free to add any strategies that you use and find effective that I may not have mentioned today. And if after the webinar, so for those maybe that are still feeling not as confident, please by all means do contact me either directly using my email, kellyjohnson@ncfe.org.uk, or if I'm unavailable, our general email is provider.development@ncfe.org.uk, and do visit ncfe.org.uk/vcerts for more information on our vCert Technical Awards. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, I have also included some of the useful references for you to refer to if you require any further information and support. At this point, please do feel free to leave the webinar, and I'd really appreciate if you could complete the short evaluation that will pop up to help us improve the support and the service that we offer. Again, thanks everyone, and on behalf of everyone here at NCFE, we wish you a safe and successful year.